public square is in a stark contrast to the prior administration, hallmarked by opacity, but also that it's simply sort of dealing out in platforms that they own so that we can see how the sausage is made.
Totally. Yesterday was essentially a modern-day civics lesson for Americans who are curious about the inner workings of government and also have a light curiosity as to whether their sitting president dabbled in some underground billionaire sex trafficking. I mean, my God, what a horrendous task it must be having to downplay and sane-wash every single piece of Trump's completely unprofessional behavior. Trump lashes out like an unhinged toddler, and it's an education on transparency. Kind of like how him grabbing women by the pussy was locker room talk. Fox News could find dismembered bodies vacuum-sealed in Trump's basement, and they'd spin it as organic meal prepping. But these are simply pundits trying to interpret the situation. It'd be great to hear from someone who actually has a working relationship with the president.
These are two titans. I respect them both. I'm, of course, a huge fan and supporter of President Trump. I was with him in the Oval Office yesterday afternoon when some of this was unfolding, and he was disappointed. I was disappointed.
Yeah, I can't think of anything worse than having a ketamine-loving billionaire put you on blast as a pedophile. But a close second would be having to be in the room when Trump saw that tweet. I'm surprised Trump's iPhone is not currently lodged in Mike Johnson's head. But what's done is done. Tweets were sent, lines were crossed. The big question now is, where do we go from here?
I think it is important for us to pray, for peace and the unification of these two guys, because as Bill Ackman said, and you've said yourself, the country's in a lot better spot when those two are united.
Yeah, that's current member of Congress Eli Crane recommending that Americans pray for a peaceful resolution between two men at war, and somehow isn't talking about these two. But I gotta say, when Republicans start wheeling out thoughts and prayers, this thing is never getting resolved. That is Republican speak for wrap it up, folks. We're done here. This puppy's cooked. And sorry to break it to you, but there is no amount of thoughts or prayers that's going to heal this relationship. As much as I hate to do it, let's put aside the spiteful car sales and the accusations of pedophilia, because when you take away the specifics, you realize that this is nothing new. Donald Trump does this to literally everyone. He will turn on you the moment you lose your usefulness. And while everyone may not have a billion-dollar war chest, or even an oddly pale literal chest, it's always the same routine. Trump surrounds himself with a parade of groveling sycophants who refuse to believe that they'll ever have a target on their backs because they're just that drunk on their proximity to power. And just like being drunk, no one ever considers what's going to happen when the party's over. Everybody at the bar loves a spur-of-the-moment trip to Cabo, but hours later, when the buzz is worn off and you're sitting under those fluorescent lights at the airport terminal, eating a $20 tuna sandwich and waiting for your Spirit Airlines flight to board, reality starts to set in that maybe this was a bad idea. The list of people who have fallen for this routine is embarrassingly long, but it is a crystal clear roadmap for how we got here. Trump cares about Elon as much as he cared about Ronna McDaniel, the former head of the RNC, who he openly mocked. About his loyal donor and EU ambassador Gordon Sondland, who he fired. About his former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, who he called dumb as a rock. About his other Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who had his security clearance revoked by Trump. About former Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who he trashed online. About his former donor and campaign advisor George Papadopoulos, who he threw under the bus and denied really even knowing. About Christopher Wray, his pick to run the FBI in his first term, who he then trashed and forced out to make way for Kash Patel. And about his former vice president, who he was ready to fit with a noose after Pence refused to certify an election that Donald Trump lost. And if this president can discard all of those people, if he's willing to throw MAGA loyalists and billion-dollar donors under the bus, people who at one time had genuine value to him, imagine what he'll do to working-class Americans. You think for one single second that Donald Trump cares about the mom of three who needs Medicaid and food stamps to survive? That he cares about small businesses that are getting thrown under the bus as the result of his liberating trade policies? Not a chance. Look, not to get all graduation speechy here, but if I could impart one lesson to the class of 2025, it would be this. Your future is bright. There's lots of years ahead, but if you think Donald Trump gives two shits about you, then like Mike Johnson, you're going to want to get your head checked. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.